Right, I'm going to go through some exam questions that come up quite often so that you can practice doing the calculations, because they all follow the same idea. So we need to be really, really okay with these types of questions. So this one is about relative formula mass, and there will more than likely be one of these on your exam. So you need to be able to do it. So in order to calculate the relative formula mass, it's sometimes written as MR on the paper. There's two things that you need to know, and you'll be given both of these bits of information in the question. So you need to know the atomic mass of each of the elements that you're looking at, and that is given in the question, and the number of atoms of each element, which is given as the formula of the compound, again in the question. Okay, so most of what you need is provided for you, and then you just need to work them out. Now, another thing that they might ask you to do is to calculate the percentage of one particular element within a compound. Now, you need very similar information. So again, you need the atomic mass of the element. More often than not, it's given to you. You need the number of atoms of that particular element, okay? And then you also need to know the total relative formula mass. Okay, now these questions always follow exactly the same procedure. Now, if you're feeling quite confident and want to have a go at this yourself, pause the video, have a go at it, and then come back and check your answers. Right, okay, so the first one jumps straight in and is asking for a percentage by mass. Now, I've got CH4, which is methane, and they want to know about carbon. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I've got my carbon. There's one of them, so it's 1 times 12, which is 12. Okay, now the formula mass of methane, CH4, they've actually given me. Okay, so I don't even need to work it out. So that is 16. So what I know now is that 12 for the carbon out of the total of 16, so 12 out of 16 is carbon. Okay, now when we say out of, what we're really talking about is dividing. So if you're thinking about working out a percentage, if you've got 12 out of 16, then that's a divide. Okay, so that's going to be 12 divided by 16, and then to make it into my percentage, I'm going to times it by 100. So I'm just going to grab a calculator. Okay, so 12 divided by 16 equals times 100 gives me 75%. Okay, so everything that you need is here. We just need to remember how to do the division. Right, okay, so again, if you want to pause the video and have a go at the next one, then you can do. Okay, so this time they want us to work out the MR, and they've given us the formula of our compound there. And then they've given us the atomic masses for magnesium and chlorine. Okay, now you need to always write it out longhand so that you don't get in a muddle. So we've got 1 times mg, okay, because I've got no number after it, but I've got 2 chlorines. Okay, so I've written out what elements and how many atoms of each element I've got in that formula. So if I've got 1 mg, then that's 1 times 24, which is 24. If I've got 2 lots of chlorine, then it's 2 times 35.5, which is 71. Now I add those two together. I know my mental maths is terrible, which gives me 95. Okay, so we always follow exactly the same procedure for these types of questions. So anytime you see that Mr., the MR symbol, then this is exactly what you do. So I'm going to go through another few examples. Each time you can pause the video and you can have a practice first. Right, okay, so again, we've got calculate the MR of water, and they've given me my formula there. Let's just try and get it back into focus. So I'm going to write out what I've got. So I've got 2 times H, because I've got the number after it, because the number is only related to the letters before it. And I've got 1 times O. So that means I've got 2 times 1, which is 2. And 1 times 16, which is 16. I add them together, and that gives me 18. Okay, so I've done exactly the same procedure for this question as I did for the other ones. Right, okay, the next one. So again, we're working out the relative formula mass. I've got my formula and I've got my two numbers. So in this case, I've got 1 times Sn and 2 times F. So I'm going to do 1 times 119, which is 119, and 2 times the fluorine, which is 19. So that's going to be 38. I add them together, which gives me 157. Okay, right, so this question now goes on to ask me about the percentage by mass of fluorine. So this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for just fluorine. Now, because I've done this already, okay, it helps me do this question. So my fluorine has got a total here, because there's two of them. I've already done this calculation. My fluorine is 38. Okay, so that's the mass of fluorine in my compound. So that's 38. The total is here, which is 157. All right, so again, 38 out of 157 is fluorine. So remember that out of is divide, so 38 out of 157 times 100 to make it into a percent. So 38 divided by 157 times 100 gives me, now it gives me 24.2. Okay, now the next bit, again, these all follow on from each other, and this is worth 2, 4, 5 marks altogether. So it's worth just working through it. Now the answers you'll carry forward. Okay, so a tube of toothpaste has got 1.2 grams of my compound in. Now what I need to know is the mass of fluorine. Okay, so I know that out of my compound, 24.2% is fluorine. Now if I've got 1.2 grams, then I need to find what 24.2% of 1.2 grams is. So I'm going to reconvert my 24.2% back into a decimal. So, what am I doing there? 24.2 divided by 100. Okay, that will give me my decimal back. And then I'm going to multiply that by my mass here, which is 1.2. Okay, so 24.2 divided by 100 times 1.2 gives me 0.29 grams. Okay, so this really is probably the harder part of that question rather than these two ideas. So we definitely need to be absolutely perfect on relative formula mass and percentages. This is probably the hardest bit. Right, okay, we've got one more to have a go at. Okay, so again, you can pause the video if you want to have a go at it yourself. So calamine lotion is used to treat itching. The main ingredients are 2 metal oxides. Now this is another way that they can get you to use relative formula masses. Now they've said one of them has got a mass of 81. Okay, so one of these metal oxides, one of these compounds has got a formula of a mass of 81. Now the formula of this metal oxide is MO. But M is not the right symbol for the metal. So we've got a little bit of detective work here to work out. Now, what we need to do is they've told us oxygen is 16. Okay, so 16 of that is oxygen. So we need to find out, well, how much is left. Okay, so we're going to calculate the relative atomic mass of the metal. So I'm going to do my total minus the 16. So 81 minus 6, oops, clumsy fingers. 81 minus 16 gives me 65. Now, if I look that up on the periodic table, which I can't see that far, let me just go and get that. Okay, so it might ask me then, what is that metal? So identify that metal. So if I go to the periodic table, I'm looking for the element with a big number, the highest number of 65. Okay, so if I go along, they generally tend to be in order. So that metal would be zinc. Okay, so this is another way that you can apply the idea of relative atomic mass.